The professional basketball playoffs represent the absolute pinnacle of human athletic competition, where every single possession carries the massive weight of an entire grueling season, and the margin for error completely vanishes into thin air. To survive and ultimately thrive in this incredibly unforgiving environment, a team must completely master an impossibly delicate psychological balance between maintaining cold, calculated tactical poise and unleashing absolute raw, unbridled passion on the court. It is an emotional tightrope that is notoriously difficult to walk, because the exact moment you lean too far toward pure emotion, you make reckless, unforced mistakes, and the moment you become too heavily calculated, you lose the sheer physical intensity required to actually win the brutal physical battles on the hardwood. This highly complex psychological struggle is currently the absolute biggest defining storyline surrounding the Boston Celtics right now, as they desperately search for the exact right mental formula to regain total control of their highly contested first-round playoff series against the fiercely competitive Philadelphia 76ers. Just a few short days ago, everything seemed absolutely perfect in the city of Boston, as the Celtics completely dismantled Philadelphia in a historic series opening blowout victory by a massive score of 123-91. In that opening game, Boston looked like an absolute unstoppable juggernaut, firing on all cylinders, defensively connected, offensively brilliant, and playing with a level of sheer hunger that completely overwhelmed their opponent from the opening tip. But as is so incredibly often the case in the grueling marathon of the Eastern Conference playoffs, human nature inevitably crept into the locker room, and the entire narrative violently shifted during a highly disappointing and incredibly frustrating Game 2. The 76ers stormed right back onto the legendary parquet floor of the TD Garden and delivered a massive physical statement by defeating Boston 111-97, completely stealing home court advantage and tying the series at 1 game apiece. This sudden, shocking reversal of fortune has sent massive shockwaves through the passionate fan base and immediately forced absolutely everyone to deeply question exactly what went wrong for a team that had just won 56 games during the regular season and comfortably secured the second overall seed in the East. When head coach Joe Mazzulla was directly asked by the media following the brutal loss whether the defeat was primarily caused by a fundamental lack of tactical execution or a glaring lack of sheer physical intensity, his brutally honest and incredibly telling response was simply that it was a little bit of both. That sobering reality manifested itself in several highly distinct and incredibly painful ways throughout the course of Tuesday night, in front of a completely stunned home crowd. From a pure offensive execution standpoint, Boston actually did a relatively decent job of generating high-quality shots for their primary scorers and reliable role players. The intricate offensive system created plenty of incredibly clean, wide-open looks from beyond the perimeter, which is exactly what the analytics department desires on every single possession of a basketball game. However, the absolute catastrophic failure occurred entirely in the actual physical execution of putting the basketball safely through the hoop. The Celtics completely fell deeply in love with the perimeter shot to a fatal degree and proceeded to miss an absolutely staggering 37 of the 53-point shots they hoisted up throughout the long game. Finishing a critical playoff matchup with a completely dismal conversion rate of just 26% from beyond the arc is a mathematical recipe for absolute disaster against any professional opponent, let alone a highly motivated Philadelphia squad actively looking for revenge. When a basketball team becomes that heavily dependent on the three-point shot and completely refuses to aggressively attack the painted area or put intense physical pressure on the rim, they become entirely predictable and incredibly easy to guard. The long missed shots inevitably lead to incredibly long, unpredictable rebounds, which completely fuels the opposing team's fast transition offense before the Boston defense even has a chance to properly set up their half-court scheme. But the highly publicized offensive struggles were honestly only half of the terrifying equation that directly led to the Game 2 collapse. On the exact opposite end of the floor, the Boston defense that looked so incredibly connected and absolutely dictated every single term of engagement to Tyrese Maxey and his talented teammates in Game 1 suddenly looked completely disjointed, a step slow, and severely lacking in fundamental execution. The defensive rotations were incredibly late, the critical closeouts on perimeter shooters were extremely lazy, and the overall physical point of attack defense was highly vulnerable to simple dribble penetration by the faster guards. But perhaps the absolute most glaring and completely unacceptable defensive breakdown occurred during a highly pivotal stretch in the second quarter, where the Celtics completely forgot how to aggressively secure the defensive glass. Rebounding is often widely considered the absolute truest measure of a team's hard overall effort and pure unadulterated desire to win a professional basketball game. It requires sheer physical force properly boxing out your opponent and simply wanting the loose ball significantly more than the other guy wearing the opposite color jersey. In that disastrous second quarter, the 76ers absolutely dominated the sheer physicality of the paint and produced a massive 11 of their 19 total second-chance points in that 12-minute period alone. There was one highly specific and incredibly frustrating sequence that perfectly encapsulated the entire massive lack of Boston intensity during that critical quarter. Philadelphia forward Kelly Oubre Jr. missed a standard free throw attempt, which should absolutely always result in an incredibly easy and routine defensive rebound for the defending team to secure possession. Instead, Dominic Barlow simply wanted it more and completely muscled his way right through the passive Boston big men to secure a massive offensive rebound right under the basket. He immediately kicked the ball out to VJ Edgecombe, who calmly buried a back-breaking three-pointer that completely silenced the home crowd and entirely shifted the overall momentum of the game. That one single solitary sequence captured an incredibly crucial controllable factor that Boston could have easily managed and absolutely must manage significantly better moving forward if they genuinely want to advance in the postseason. Giving up an offensive rebound on a missed free throw is absolutely not a failure of a complex defensive scheme or a brilliant tactical adjustment by the opposing coaching staff. It is simply a massive failure of pure physical effort and fundamental focus. Following the highly disappointing loss, Jaylen Brown stood completely tall in front of the media and delivered a deeply honest and highly critical assessment of his team's overall performance. He plainly stated that he thought Philadelphia simply outcompeted them on that specific night, and he openly admitted that the Boston intensity level absolutely could have been significantly better across the board from top to bottom. He continued his candid reflection by pointing out that defensively they were entirely lacking, and ultimately concluded that they just have to be a much better basketball team, period. He wisely reminded everyone watching that this is the professional playoffs and the team over in the opposing locker room is filled with highly talented ball players who came fully prepared to play incredibly hard. Brown heavily emphasized the harsh reality that on any given night in this league, you can easily lose a game if you do not come out of the tunnel with the exact right mindset from the very opening tip-off. His powerful words perfectly highlight the incredibly delicate nature of playoff basketball and the massive danger of creeping complacency when you feel too comfortable. When you blow a professional team out by 30 points in the first game, it is natural human instinct to subconsciously relax and foolishly assume that the second game will be exactly as easy. But the 76ers are a highly proud franchise with their own legitimate championship aspirations, and they use the absolute humiliation of Game 1 to heavily fuel their physical fire and completely dictate the entire physicality of Game 2. Now the Boston Celtics find themselves walking a massive emotional tightrope as they desperately try to navigate the choppy waters of sudden adversity and figure out exactly how to completely regain control of this series before it slips entirely out of their grasp. This specific situation is actually incredibly fascinating from a historical perspective, because the Celtics have a highly strange and completely baffling recent history of dropping Game 2 of a playoff series entirely. In fact, dating back to the start of the 2024 season, they hold a highly mediocre record of just 3 wins and 4 losses in Game 2 matchups. What makes that statistic even more incredibly bizarre and deeply concerning is that all 7 of those specific games took place right on their home floor at the TD Garden. For some completely unexplainable reason, this highly talented core group of players repeatedly struggles to maintain their absolute peak emotional edge and competitive fire in the second game of a series when playing comfortably in front of their own passionate fans. However, it is also incredibly important to look at the larger contextual picture and realize that outside of those specific Game 2 letdowns, they possess an absolutely dominant record of 20 wins and just 5 losses in all other playoff games during that exact same time span. This massive statistical discrepancy proves definitively that they absolutely know exactly how to completely bounce back from adversity, and they understand exactly what winning at the absolute highest level in the postseason truly requires. Boston has experienced significantly more overall success and deep playoff runs than the vast majority of franchises in the modern era, led brilliantly by the incredible foundational duo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The core group of veterans that leads this specific team has been through absolutely every single type of playoff battle imaginable, from sweeping weaker opponents to surviving grueling 7-game wars against elite contenders. They know deep down that true playoff success heavily involves the absolute mastery of daily preparation and meticulously managing exactly what goes on physically and mentally in the quiet, crucial days between the actual games. In order to successfully bounce back and regain total control of this highly physical first-round rivalry clash, they have to completely reset their entire mental framework and rediscover the pure hunger that defined their dominant regular season. Head coach Joe Mazzulla spoke at length on Wednesday at the Auerbach Center about the incredibly complex nature of preparation and the different distinct types of intensity required to ultimately win a championship banner. He wisely explained that the required intensity for their upcoming Friday night matchup actually starts days in advance with the pure mental intensity of their daily preparation and a relentless focus on simply getting better as a cohesive unit. He heavily emphasized the Stoic philosophy that all you can ever truly do as a fierce competitor is focus entirely on the specific things that you can directly control in your immediate environment. You cannot physically control if a wide-open three-point shot decides to violently rattle out of the rim, and you absolutely cannot control if the referees make a highly questionable foul call against your star player. But you can absolutely control your sheer effort, your extensive film study, your defensive rotations, and your pure physical intensity when you step onto the hardwood. Mazzulla broke down his entire unique coaching philosophy by stating that the physical intensity naturally happens when the team is actively in practice, running through their physical walkthroughs, and of course when the actual game tips off. But he astutely pointed out that there are actually completely different kinds of necessary intensity to master before you even touch a basketball. There is a deep mental and emotional intensity that you absolutely must cultivate internally to survive the overwhelming pressure cooker of the playoffs. He explained that Wednesday was specifically designated as a pure mental day for the entire roster to completely decompress and process the failure. It was a crucial opportunity for the players to sit down, completely analyze the game film gain, a proper healthy perspective on the series, and truly understand exactly where they currently stand and precisely where they desperately need to get better immediately. Once that heavy mental processing is completely finished, they then transition smoothly into the highly detailed tactical adjustments and complex scheme changes. And finally, when the ball is thrown up in the air on Friday night, they unleash the pure physical stuff that the fans pay to see. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the strategic mind of the team, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible daily basketball analysis as we continue our journey through the postseason. This incredibly structured and highly calculated ramp-up plan is a very well-tested methodology that Mazzulla has successfully utilized for years to keep his team grounded. It is a specific, deliberate process that has historically helped the Boston Celtics perform at their absolute highest possible best exactly when the stakes are the highest, and it truly matters the most. Now, this current group of incredibly talented individuals who intentionally try to frame immense pressure as a rare privilege rather than a heavy burden gets to fully embrace the massive test of their true core identity that aggressively awaits them on Friday night in the highly hostile environment of Philadelphia. Throughout this entire incredibly successful season, their pure, unadulterated hunger has constantly fueled them through nagging injuries, tough road trips, and difficult stretches of the regular season schedule. There is an absolutely relentless underlying nature to this specific group that is filled with highly motivated individuals determined to constantly prove themselves to the doubting national media while willingly shouldering significantly more overall responsibility than ever before. That exact dedicated professional approach is precisely what originally propelled them to an incredibly impressive 56 wins and the highly coveted second seed in the Eastern Conference standings. It was also blindingly evident during their beautiful 123-91 series opening victory against these exact same 76ers. But as we all clearly witnessed, that pure intensity completely dipped at terrible times during the highly frustrating Game 2 loss. It is a highly unfortunate but incredibly familiar emotional route for these Celtics to temporarily lose their absolute focus. But what typically follows these exact type of letdowns is a massive and incredibly swift course correction that absolutely destroys the opposing team in the very next game. The locker room is heavily filled with incredibly steady veteran leaders who simply do not panic when the road gets slightly bumpy or the media narrative turns negative. Derrick White, a player known strictly for his incredible poise and clutch decision-making, confidently voiced exactly that stoic sentiment to the media on Wednesday afternoon. He calmly stated that he thinks a lot of the guys in that specific locker room have already been in highly stressful playoff situations, exactly like this one many times before, and successfully bouncing back is absolutely something that they have completely proven they can do in the recent past. He astutely acknowledged that obviously every single NBA season is slightly different, and this is a completely different roster with unique physical challenges. But he made sure to heavily emphasize that he has absolutely just got a massive amount of pure confidence in absolutely everybody on the team, that they will be completely ready to go to absolute war for Game 3. That type of unwavering quiet confidence is exactly what is required to win a professional championship in this highly unforgiving league. You absolutely cannot let one single bad shooting night or one terrible quarter of defensive rebounding completely shatter your core belief in the foundational system that got you to the playoffs in the first place. The Boston Celtics absolutely know exactly who they are, and they know exactly what they are entirely capable of achieving when they play with the required level of connected defensive intensity and completely unselfish offensive flow. Moving forward into the crucial Game 3 matchup in Philadelphia, the Celtics must make several highly important tactical and psychological adjustments if they truly want to reclaim the series momentum. First and foremost, they must absolutely rediscover their highly aggressive mindset when attacking the painted area, instead of just settling for deep perimeter shots. Hoisting up 53-point shot attempts is simply playing directly into the hands of the Philadelphia defense, which desperately wants to avoid getting into foul trouble and actively wants long rebounds to fuel their fast breaks in transition. Boston has the superior athletic wing players in Tatum and Brown, who absolutely need to relentlessly put their heads down, completely absorb physical contact, and aggressively attack the rim on every single offensive possession until the defense is completely forced to collapse inward. Once the 76ers are fully forced to commit multiple extra defenders to stop the relentless rim pressure, that is exactly when the beautiful wide-open perimeter shots will naturally open up in rhythm for players like Derrick White and Peyton Pritchard and Al Horford to knock down with high efficiency. Furthermore, the Celtics absolutely cannot afford to have another entirely lazy quarter on the defensive glass under any circumstances. Joe Mazzulla will undoubtedly be harping intensely on the fundamental importance of properly boxing out and aggressively pursuing every single loose ball with absolute maximum effort and sheer determination. The big men absolutely need to completely establish their physical dominance incredibly early in the game and send a crystal clear message that absolutely no second chance points will be easily given away in the paint on Friday night. They also have to drastically tighten up their overall point of attack defense and completely refuse to let Tyrese Maxey dictate the entire speed and offensive flow of the game. Maxey is an incredibly dangerous and highly explosive offensive weapon who thrives on sheer speed and wide open space, so Boston must utilize their massive length and physical defensive versatility to completely crowd his airspace and make absolutely every single dribble incredibly difficult for him to execute. They have to intelligently navigate the countless physical screens, aggressively contest every single perimeter jump shot, and completely force the other Philadelphia role players to try and single-handedly beat them in isolation. The highly intense tactical chess match between Joe Mazzulla and the opposing coaching staff will be incredibly fascinating to watch unfold over the next few highly stressful days. Will Boston decide to play a slightly smaller and much faster lineup to run Philadelphia completely off the three-point line, or will they aggressively lean heavily into their massive size advantage to absolutely punish them in the low post and completely dominate the rebounding battle? Regardless of the highly specific tactical choices they ultimately decide to deploy, the absolute most important factor will undeniably be the sheer level of pure mental and physical intensity they bring to the basketball court when the lights shine the brightest. The beautiful city of Boston is incredibly hungry for another historic championship parade, and the passionate fans desperately want to see their beloved team completely rise to the massive occasion and showcase their true dominant championship potential. The overall external pressure is undeniably incredibly high, But as this team constantly likes to remind themselves that massive pressure is an absolute privilege that only the very best professional teams in the entire world actually get to experience in late April, the 76ers have successfully landed a highly painful counterpunch to the jaw. But now it is absolutely entirely up to the Boston Celtics to respond with a massive knockout blow of their own and definitively prove to the entire basketball world that they are truly ready to conquer the Eastern Conference and bring Banner 19 back to the legendary TD Garden where it rightfully belongs.